Muito boa tarde a todos e a todas. Primeiro que tudo, quero pedir desculpas por este compasso de espera que, por problemas técnicos que não conseguimos ultrapassar, estamos a iniciar com este atraso. Contudo, bem-vindos à continuação dos trabalhos das conferências de economia social realizadas no âmbito da Capital Europeia da Economia Social, sob a iniciativa do Ministério do Trabalho, Solidariedade e Segurança Social e organizado pela cooperativa António Sérgio para a Economia Social e pelo município de Cascais, em parceria com a Faculdade de Economia da Universidade de Coimbra. Esta manhã tivemos a oportunidade de assistir a palestras sobre diversos temas, nomeadamente o papel da economia social na promoção do emprego, a importância da recolha de dados estatísticos sobre este setor e o exemplo português, e os desafios da inovação social e as prioridades do Plano de Ação Europeu para a Economia Social. Foram ainda apresentadas as recomendações da Declaração de Cascais para o Plano de Ação Europeu para a Economia Social, tendo-se seguido um painel sobre os desafios a nível local na aplicação das prioridades europeias. Esta tarde iremos aprofundar duas dessas prioridades, a transição verde e a transição digital, num painel que contará com ilustres participantes, peritos em ambas as áreas e também com a partilha de boas práticas de organizações que no terreno, todos os dias, fazem acontecer a transição verde e a transição digital. Para moderar este painel, temos connosco o Sérgio Barroso, um amigo da rede social de Cascais, que tem colaborado connosco em diversas áreas, por isso acho que ele tem um bocadinho do coração dele aqui para o nosso conselho, a pender para o nosso conselho. O Sérgio Barroso é geógrafo, urbanista e consultor de entidades públicas nacionais e europeias. Desde 2001, que é diretor do CEDRU, Centro de Estudos de Desenvolvimento Regional e Urbano, e especialista nas áreas do ordenamento e do desenvolvimento territorial, da adaptação às alterações climáticas, do planeamento urbano e estratégico, do desenvolvimento social e da avaliação das políticas públicas. Vou-vos deixar com o Sérgio Barroso, que fará as honras da casa agora com este painel. Obrigada.
Muito obrigado. Naturalmente que é um gosto muito grande poder estar aqui hoje e poder moderar esta sessão desta tarde. Um gosto por ser Cascais, por ser de facto um projeto, uma sessão que muito diz à rede social de Cascais, uma rede que tenho acompanhado e porque tenho grande estima e admiração pelo trabalho que vem desenvolvendo. Um gosto também muito grande pela qualidade dos oradores e pelo ecletismo e diversidade dos oradores que vamos ter hoje durante esta tarde. E um gosto muito particular pelas três temáticas que se conjugam nesta sessão de hoje. Há muito que venha insistindo sobre a necessidade do setor social, um setor vital para o bem-estar e para o desenvolvimento das comunidades, a importância do setor social se sensibilizar, participar, preparar para os desafios das transições que o país, a Europa e o mundo enfrentam. Ficará de fora da sessão de hoje a transição demográfica, que é também um desafio vital. Em Cascais conhecemos bem a dinâmica demográfica que o Conselho está a enfrentar e a expectativa que nós temos do envelhecimento demográfico, mas como a pandemia nos tem tornado bastante evidente, nós enfrentamos hoje desafios societais complexos que afetam não só a forma como as organizações funcionam, como os seus recursos humanos estão melhor ou pior preparados para lidar com estes desafios, mas desafios que são desafios das comunidades, desafios dos municípios, desafios das regiões. E a economia social tem um papel fundamental e vai lidar de forma muito próxima com estes desafios, que em larga medida, como temos visto durante a pandemia, quando estes desafios não são devidamente bem preparados, enfrentamos um agravamento das desigualdades e da exclusão social e é nesse momento, mais do que nunca, que voltamos a necessitar da economia social como um agente fundamental para o bem-estar. E, portanto, esta sessão de hoje traz-nos seguramente temas e reflexões, mas também vai-nos trazer experiências e boas práticas, inspiradoras, por certo, que nos podem apontar rumos para estes desafios da transição verde e da transição digital na economia social. Dito isto, e para recuperarmos o tempo que nós temos fundamentalmente três sessões neste nosso painel. Uma primeira sessão onde vamos abordar as questões da transição digital, um segundo sobre a transição verde e, finalmente, vamos ter a oportunidade de ver experiências concretas e práticas concretas, tanto no Conselho como fora do Conselho. E, dando início a esta nossa sessão, eu queria convidar o Dr. Bernardo de Sousa para uma primeira intervenção. O Dr. Bernardo de Sousa é coordenador do Pilar 1 do Plano de Ação para a Transição Digital, na estrutura de missão Portugal Digital, e é também o coordenador executivo para os eixos da educação, da inclusão, da Iniciativa Nacional de Competências Digitais. Tem uma vastíssima experiência em agências públicas dedicadas à questão social e é um grande amigo que tenho muito gosto em tê-lo aqui. Obrigado.
Muito obrigado, Sérgio. Boa tarde a todos.
Thank you very much, Sergio. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to start by thanking you for the invitation. It is a big pleasure to be back to Cascais. It's good to see that social economy is alive and kicking, we can say, and how the local government has been developing this path. Today, and the challenge that I was given has to do with the digital area, digital era, and how digital transition is challenging and bringing about opportunities to social economy. As we know, and trying to be as quick as possible, talking about this topic, we all understand that with the pandemics, we had to develop quite a lot in the digital area. But this is something that was already happening previously. If we look at the trends in the world, we see that 4 in each 10 new functions will have a high digital intensification with big changes. And we all feel this, and we understand how important it is to develop the digital era, the digital area and fields in our lives, in our family relations. And then we have to understand how to better position regarding this index of digitalization of the economy and the society. And there are challenges that we need to overcome as a country, especially, and this is a field that is important for social economy, in the field of the skills that we need to develop. The main field where we are in line with European average are digital skills. So I thought a little bit about the challenges for the organizations of the social community and the economy, because it represents about 80% of paid employment in Portugal, more than 3% of gross added value. Therefore, this is important for the normal activities that we develop, and it's in fact a big challenge. So we need to understand how to establish bridges so that we have organizations that are important and develop activities at the local level. So we have to consider, on the one hand, people, the organizations of social economy, and the impact of digital and the opportunities open, and the relation with these stakeholders, because there are new opportunities open also at this level. In terms of the people, we have two main challenges that I would like to stress out. In the idea of leaving no one behind is, of course, fundamental for our modern societies. No one can be left behind, because we understand that if this gap will be bigger, we will have more inequality. If we have children in school with no access to the digital, this gap will be huge, because there will be many citizens not having access to the digital services, despite all investments done by the government. Things as simple as having access or understanding if the vaccination booking conclusion, we also need to talk and to consider gender equality and equal opportunities. When the experts analyze this, there is a big gap in the perspective between men and women. And the more women we will bring to the digital means, the more in the future they will gain in terms of employability and having better wages, because this will help us fight against inequality. But it's important to do it in a safe way by ensuring data protection. And it is important for people to have access to these courses and to the development of their skills. And also in terms of digital skills, it's important to have rescaling, upskilling in the reinforcement of all these possibilities. So we need to invest much more on digital skills. And we know that they are more vulnerable, and the reinforcement of digital skills is extremely important, especially on those who work for social economy companies. We know that there are many workers that are info excluded and will in fact gain much more if they would be able to further develop their skills. Also upskilling or reskilling, so that people are more flexible and can move to another area of work. And it's important to have this type of opportunities. And we know that labor is always necessary in the digital field. So it's important to develop this type of training programs that can help in improving the situation of these workers. Also, in terms of specialization, the organizations need specialized, skilled labor and need to retain their talents. Moving forward towards the organizations, many organizations have been developing this type of experiences and understand that there exists. There are some opportunities, for example, in terms of the automation of processes and procedures. This morning we heard about the statistics, national statistics. So data collection and handling, it's also extremely important because it can benefit the organizations. The customization of replies, digital, and this allows us to better handle data and being able to talk to each people directly in a personalized, customized manner, providing and offering new services that are according to their needs and expectations. And finally, system integration, because we can better use the data coming from the public administration, but also other organizations. We can, of course, bearing in mind safety and security of data, but we can better use data to benefit people. This implies that we need to be more open to change and innovation, and in fact, reinforcing the idea that emerging technologies are both an opportunity and a challenge. The attraction or the need for attracting and retaining talent, and the further development of leadership with better strategic thinking and change management, talking about automation, cloud, blockchain, artificial intelligence, bringing together the leaders of this, or bringing the leaders of these organizations closer to these type of opportunities that are opened by the digital perspective. so that they have a better possibility for shifting and change and managing change. In the past, we've heard quite a lot about the need of having fresh blood in the terms of the leadership. So we need to attract new talents, new people, highly skilled people. And this is a big challenge that it's extremely important in our perspective. And finally, and I'm having a problem with technology, the speaker says. So finally, regarding these stakeholders, I would like to underline that the possibility of having integrated systems allows for another or a better relationship with stakeholders, with the beneficiaries, and we felt that quite a lot due to the pandemic, with positive and negative parts to it, of course, and we need to be aware of them. But digital allows for new ways to contact our beneficiaries, our users, and also with potential sponsors or funders. So being more visible in more distant areas, allowing for a new relationship to be established, and the need of having a closer proximity with the community and with other companies working in the same area in terms of the social network, developing projects that allow for information to be exchanged, and shared. This allows for new business models that are based on scalability, customization, internationalization, reaching other territories, other areas, and allowing for the process to be more sustainable and providing new responses. This is in line, and I don't want to talk about the action plan for digital transition, but it's very connected that these three areas are extremely important in the connection with the public administration. And the transition, digital transition, needs to be brought to all these fields, to all these areas. So this is quite in line with what I've just mentioned and what the action plan is aiming at achieving. I have here two experiences to share with you. The experience called Eu Sou Digital, I'm Digital. This was launched 1 week ago, aiming at reaching 1 million adults. And this was launched last week, as I was saying, to develop and provide new skills, new digital skills to 1 million adults, people that could not have access to the internet or didn't know how, and using volunteers coming from different partners in the civil society and municipalities, trying to reach these people, because they are usually working close to the population, and so the objective here is to provide this type of support and skills, so that in 2030 we will only have 5% of info excluded. I would like to thank you again for the invitation. It is a big pleasure to participate, and I'm available to any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bernardo. Now, moving to the next speaker, I would like to challenge those that are with us via streaming to actually send us your questions. Some of the speakers will not be available to continue to the debate, but I'm sure that this presentation raises certain issues. So if you have questions, please do send them to us. Let us see whether we can have with us Professor Carlos Silva. She is a teacher at Atlantida University, and she's responsible for the for the IT department. She also works for the Institute of Artificial Intelligence. She has developing work in the areas of computation, artificial intelligence, and I'm sure that these are topics that will affect this digital transition, and this is a tool that social economy can in fact use. And I believe that the knowledge of Carla Silva will certainly benefit this area. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I don't know whether you can hear me. Good afternoon. Well, I can see you. I don't know whether you can hear me, whether I can go ahead. Well, okay, I get to go ahead right now. So I'd like to share my screen with you. And I'm going to share with you a small presentation, and I'm going to speak to you a little bit about artificial intelligence, humanization, or utopia. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the invitation that was addressed to me by the municipality of Cascais, namely via Frederico Almeida. I'd like also to thank Frederic and Claudia that answered all my messages, and I'd like to share with all the attendees what I'm doing right now. So I would like to speak to you about artificial intelligence, humanization, or utopia, considering the role of AI in the concept of digital transition and the digital transition and the digital economy. I believe that there are three topics that I feel are important to actually bring to this forum. Well, but first of all, and because I'm a scientist, I'd like to say that I work in algorithms and computation, and I forecast data, and I do my forecasts based in everything that we know regarding patterns these days. And based on these patterns, we can, in fact, preview what is or may happen within the next years, or at least with what we see today. If I could show you the future within 100 years time, this would be more or less what would happen.
Bom, mas para que preocupar-nos
Well,
realmente
but why should we worry with the future? In fact, Albert Einstein said that we should not worry with the future because the future is yet to come. He defended that we live stopped in the space dimension while we are traveling in the time dimension, but the presence only shows us patterns. And I work with these patterns. I try to observe these patterns. I work with algorithms. I try to forecast data. And that's what I bring you, the future in this video, but I would like to share with you three very, very important projects that are being materialized right now and that work over these data. I could bring you products of many areas, but I would like to speak to you about projects in industry, medicine, and art. Now, what you are seeing in this figure is the model of Mercedes. They are working on a perfect correlation with the driver. The only thing they require is the heart faith of the driver. They only require their vision, and everything is controlled by the individual, from these data. I could speak to you also about the Sinai project. This is a project in the medical field. It's a machine of artificial intelligence that actually assesses millions and millions of diagnoses and tries to forecast the development at the level of certain brain pathologies. And an example that I feel is very, very interesting, which is the example of new Rembrandt. Now, this project has been developed by making available images of Rembrandt pictures, and then through the use of algorithms, a machine developed these algorithms and was in fact able to paint a new Rembrandt or to produce a new Rembrandt painting. So what you are seeing down below is a painting that has been made by the machine. So I think it is important to give you a vision of the projects of artificial intelligence that are ongoing right now. Nevertheless, my concern is to bring you the challenges of digital transition, considering also artificial intelligence. Now, let's go to the facts. And the facts that we have today are three, in my opinion. And I believe that they have been mentioned here as well. First, Portugal may get about 20 million to support artificial intelligence projects to promote this digital transition. And we've seen today that Portugal was one of the countries that is going to get this support at level of AI. So we know that this has been approved. The second aspect I would like to mention has to do with employment and innovation. 84% of national CEOs believe that artificial intelligence will create more jobs than destruct them. And then we have the impact in the economy. With regards to the employability, the AI will have an impact of 15%. Now, this means 1.5 million of new jobs until 2030. Last, concerning the question that was put to me, my answer is just one. Digitalization is fundamental because it represents the paradigm change, and this change of the paradigm is core, so that the society actually embeds this concept of artificial intelligence. But this leads us to a paradigm that has, as a consequence, the humanization of the machine. And this is why I actually uh, put the word humanization in the title of my presentation. I believe that this is very important. Without digitalization, I cannot work on the capacity that AI has. I need algorithms, and algorithms learn with data that I have available. It is important to digitize them. It is important to have these IT projects, but in order to do that, companies are paramount. But let's still stick to the facts. This initiative, we have a prime minister that says that this is a unique opportunity to overcome social inequalities. And in the resolution of the Council of Ministers of the 14th of May, this initiative is mentioned, and that is based in these aspects: Industry 4.0, the transformation of the entrepreneurial fabric, and also what the previous speaker mentioned. But how can we do that? Via digital transition. This plan that has these 5 axes that are mentioned here and that are present in the resolution of the Council of Ministers is based on these foundations: education and professional training, qualification and requalification, inclusion, advanced training, and research. But now let's look into the data. Let's look into the forecasts. We have 3 indicators. One of them is education, with the percentages of individuals that have digital skills, the most basic level, from ages 16 to 19. Today we have 67%. In 2025 we will have 80, and in 2030 we'll have 90. In the indicator training and qualification, the percentage of companies that supply training in IT skills to their collaborators is 23%. In 2025, 30%, and 2030, 35%. With regards to the indicator advanced training, the percentage of women among the total IT specialists that use IT in their own jobs is 18.3. In 2025 will be 25%, and in 2030 it will be 30%. So according to my forecasts, and in the video that I showed you a while ago, in 2030 we will have very interesting things, such implementation of aerolimbs, the implementation of that in our biological structure, and also the that is something that I consider to be very important. I believe that the concept of AI is in fact going to create an enormous potential for our society. We will see how we do things. If you look into this data, 30% at the level of companies, if these 30% in 2025 or 35% in 2030, if these percentages are really met regarding training and qualification, what is it that the remaining percent of companies will do? What exactly will do young people that, for instance, do not have access to these basic skills? What is it that they will do? They will be excluded, most certainly. So, in fact, we have a few milestones and a few results that result from these types of social exclusion. Now, we can have 3 types of social exclusion: exclusion of access, exclusion of use and exclusion of quality of use. Now, regarding access, this has to do with socioeconomic differences, exclusion of use due to the lack of digital skills and without knowledge to do things vis-à-vis the strategies of use. And if we understand a little bit of what happened this year with this pandemic, and if we reflect a little bit on this example to show precisely this, who were those that found it more difficult to maintain a social life and a professional life, active and with quality? I believe those were all those that did not have digital skills, those that were not able to buy online, or those that were not able to organize an event, structure online, those that were not able to work remotely. And, if an individual does not have the knowledge to actually use these tools, this is very important because it's not important just to have the tools. You need to be able to actually use them. And I often think about the consequences of social exclusion. I believe that demographics is particularly relevant in this, because if we work on demographic exclusion in digital terms, we will have to look into issues of geolocalization. Digital inclusion should not be or addressed the same way in a city and in the innermost areas of our country. And there is the in communication and isolation, which was precisely what I've just mentioned. Then we have the barrier to study and to knowledge. And then we have discrimination, social discrimination. I believe that this will affect more women than men. And last, social differences, what we call today social illiteracy. And this leads me to two issues that I would like to launch to the discussion if we have time. The first one is what I mentioned to you, who is most excluded. And the second question is to actually see what is it that the state has to do with this. And it has a lot to do with this because it has a very big impact in the solving of this, in the avoiding of these consequences, because access to the digital implies the acquisition of digital skills among the population. Otherwise, we will have two types of illiteracy. I mentioned digital illiteracy, but we may have those that are actually not able to read and write. We have very few of these today, and that's good. But then those that do not have IT skills, and right now there are lots of these. If the state decided to massify primary school, we now need to massify digital learning. And this must be one of our concerns and the strategies that I have to actually respond to your question are digital literacy programs and an alliance to be able to actually be access to digital. And we need to be able to reach the programs, and we need to provide training to people so that they have well-being and alliance to an accessible internet. This has to be led by the state and by social society. It must include companies so that we may have a broad area of access, internet access for all users. And please notice that what I'm actually saying may be difficult to actually achieve, But what I mentioned down here below, Starlink and Free Basics are two projects that actually are working on this. Starlink was an initiative that was promoted by Facebook, and that has the object of giving free access to a series of websites via a mobile application. And Free Basics, this has been promoted by Elon Musk, and it has to do with launching a series of satellites in order to offer internet, high-speed internet, globally at accessible prices. So the space may be an interesting step for all of us. Thank you.
Bernardo tem que sair e eu queria aproveitar.
Bernardo will have to leave us, and I want to take this opportunity to ask a question to both speakers. You spoke about technology with amazing pictures, but they are very provocative also. And we need to bear in mind that you were very serious in your presentations, and this shows clearly the challenges. In Portugal, we have 1 million still needing to develop basic skills on the internet. And it's important to have this digital transition that was presented by Carla, and showing that there will be some peaks in terms of unemployment. You were very clear in your presentation, both Bernardo and Carla, on the big challenges that we have in terms of skills, because skills are decisive in terms of equality of opportunities. And this was very clear. And I would like to ask Bernardo, in terms of the social economy, how does this connect from the perspective of the organizations? Because the organizations can be an agent to mitigate and be a partner of the state to act together with the state to mitigate inequality. But there is another challenge that has to do with digitization of the very organization. So in terms of the national agenda for transition, what are the opportunities that these organizations have to be more modern and to modernize in this area? Can you hear me? Yes, why, thank you very much for that question, because digital skills are central in this debate, and it is extremely important to involve all stakeholders. And the social economy has a twofold role here, from the perspective of the users, and secondly, as you asked, from the perspective of the resources, the human resources of the organizations. From that perspective, the state has an important role with reinforcing the possibilities of providing training to people, not only those who are unemployed, but also to those who work, to workers and employees. We approved the statement stating that 60% of the people should have lifelong learning and have access to lifelong learning. And I think that the Institute for Employment and Vocational Training has a support line for this type of training for people that work on the organizations of the social sector. And on this agenda, there should be indeed a reflection in a very specific and targeted strategic way to the digital area. From everything that Carlos Silva mentioned, we should consider what is important or what is more important to do immediately. So the sector, not only the government, the state should do this, but the very sector should think about the digital skills and those that are necessary at different levels, because the organizations work in different fields, in different areas. So they need to understand their needs and try to overcome those needs in a transversal manner, in a cross-cutting manner. And it's 1,800,000 that need this skills development. The program is not going to cover 100% of info excluded, but a good part of it. As I've mentioned, we are not talking about retired people. We are talking about a few people also in active age, and the objective is to develop their basic skills. And Carlos Silva showed us the figures. And there was a resolution from the Council of Ministers reinforcing this and putting this in the agenda with a very strategic component here in the interaction between science and technology, labor, and social security ministries. And the resolution provides for concrete indicators. So we need also to consider the younger generations between 16 and 29 years of age. We still have lots of people that need to develop basic skills, basic competencies that are fundamental to be part of the labor market. Therefore, it is extremely important not only in their education, their initial education, with the investment we did in terms of allocation of computers to people who did not have them. And we know that it's necessary to provide the necessary resources. It's not enough to give people a computer. They need to be able to connect it to the internet, reliable internet. And this is important throughout life in terms of lifelong education, not only as an education or training. So upskilling is important. There are some fields that we cannot forget. And of course, digital is not a panacea to all difficulties and problems. So please don't get this idea that it's going to solve everything. It brings about new challenges, but other opportunities as well. And it provides concrete responses that can be very important and have to do with upskilling and reskilling of workers. The upskill program was launched and we'll have a second edition very shortly for people with the 12th grade of studies or even with university studies. We'll have 6 months intensive training to be brought to some companies, to work in some companies that are associated to the program, and which are going to hire 80% of these people after this 6+3 time period on different areas with programming, clouding, which connect to the future that Carla brought to us, to our attention. Thank you very much. We could continue talking about this forever. We have another topic that we need to address in our session that has to do with green transition. And I would like to ask Joana Pinto-Balsemão to tell us about the experience in Cascais. She is a member of the municipality of Cascais. She is responsible for environmental requalification and the environment in the municipality, and she has a wide experience on these matters, together with international experience in Portuguese and European institutions. Thank you, Sergio. Good afternoon. I would like to greet our moderator and the other members of the panel and thank to the municipality for inviting me. I was asked to talk a little bit about the green transition, and I will give you a few examples of the social sector. So what is green transition? I will talk about the future as well as the previous speakers did, to tell you about two main topics that have to do with climate change and environmental degradation. And the way we deal with these two topics by bringing about innovation and trying to reduce some of the inequality. That's why I brought these quotes talking about the need for training and help so that we don't lose jobs unnecessarily and not leaving anyone behind. So the topic of my presentation and the panel as a whole is exactly this idea that we are going through different types of transitions and we need to be careful not to leave anyone behind. So those two components, why are we going through this green transition? Because we have a big challenge ahead of us, which is climate change. And you see a graph on the left, which is very famous and self-explanatory, bringing information for the last 400,000 years, so millions and millions of years ago, showing the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere since that time. Scientists dig holes and are able to study the different components of the air bubbles. And we see that there were some changes, but never as significant as the one we now have. Never the concentration was so high. That means that the greenhouse effect gases in the atmosphere are extremely high, rise in the sea level, also in terms of the temperature. So we have this thermal expansion, not only because the glaciers are melting down. The sea level rises, and what does this mean? That we have higher level of erosion, islands that are countries, nations that are being drowned. Kiribati Island, for example, they have to buy a part of the Fiji Islands to have their territory. So here in Cascais, when we have storms, they will be much more damaging because the sea is higher and the storm is going to attack more of our territory. The temperature of the oceans rises and there is an acidification and an impact on biodiversity and then an impact on the fish that we are able to fish and eat. So there are lots of effects from higher drafts, stronger drafts, forest fires, and so on. So what can we do to improve all this? This is a coin with two sides.
É nossa obrigação
On the one side, we have to mitigate by reducing the level of emissions. And how can we do this? There are some solutions here that seem to be very simple. We know that the transport sector is one of the main guilties in this area. So the more we use public transportation, the less individual transportation based on fossil fuels will use, and that will be better. Whenever we use any appliance at home, we are consuming electricity that is based by renewables, but 40 to 50% of the energy consumption comes from fossil fuel plants, as we know. Also, in terms of forestation is extremely important because they are able to get the CO2. We need to do this simultaneously. We need to reduce our footprint, but also we need to adapt because climate change is here and we need to prevent its effects. And how can we do this? You see the example of Cascais, a drought in downtown Cascais caused by strong rain and the Ribeira das Vinhas area. And then you see the requalification of the river part, because if you requalify with nature, with friendly, you are preventing droughts through the permeability of the land. The plantation of trees in the cities as well, because we know of the heat waves. We've heard about Canada and the north of the United States, hundreds of people that were killed by these waves, these heat waves. And trees help in reducing the temperature in the city by reducing the temperature, but also because of the ecosystem. So that was it about climate change. And when we talk about green transition, we also need to bear in mind the environmental degradation. And what is that? The loss of biodiversity. And why is this important for us? Because trees and plants not only absorb CO2, but also produce oxygen. And they are the house of birds, insects, and a lot of biodiversity. They filter the water, the pollutants in the air. So we feel this every day. Just because we have the natural park here in Cascais, we know of these effects. Pollution in Europe, around 1 million people die because of air pollution, the quality of the waters, because the sea is responsible for 60% of the oxygen, and the living organisms that exist in the sea are responsible for this. Now, for the solutions, what can we do to invert this process of environmental degradation? We can use a circular economy. This seems like a buzzword, but this is as simple as recycling, separating the waste. We are promoting this, which is the contrary of linear economy, where I buy a product and it ends in the landfill. In this circular economy, instead of taking it to a landfill, it is reinserted in the economy. The toaster that is not working is not thrown to a landfill, but to an eco center, and the different parts are removed. The plastic, the metal can be reused for different purposes for other products. What can we do in addition to this? We can support innovation because there are many ideas for this. The fishermen in Cascais separated nets that they are not working anymore, the fishing gears, and they are used, for example, for shoes. To build the soles of shoes, and we will be giving these shoes to our fishermen as well. And we are talking about this on this panel, which is also extremely important. And how does all this affect the most vulnerable communities in our countries? All of this is interconnected. In the world at large, we know that climate change affects significantly the forest countries. I talked about the Kiribati Island, which is drowning. This does not happen in the Netherlands because they have other means, other possibilities, and they are able to rebuild their areas. We know that in the Sudan, because of the severe drought, farmers are not able to leave and they have to move and have these rural exodus. And with the pressure of the loss of job, we have social turmoils. In Portugal, we have drought in the Alentejo, people that are not able to develop their farming activities. When we feel the effect of this inequality and degradation will affect more people, underprivileged people that have less access to knowledge, information, and other solutions. And this will end up in being what we call energy poverty. In the winter, many people die in Portugal, much more than in colder countries in the remaining of Europe. Why? Because our houses are not built to be prepared to these differences in temperature. So a family or an elderly couple, for example, without the necessary income, if they live in a house that is not warm, if and the houses don't have double glasses, for example, on the winds, and they are not able to insulate the house and have a central heating system that is sustainable and effective, this couple is going to buy oil heater, for example, which is not efficient as well. And they will pay much more for their energy consumption. The house is not warm enough, and uh, probably they have to go to hospital, and when they go back home the house continues not to be well prepared. So when we have to spend more than 60% of our income on energy, this is called energy poverty. In the United Kingdom we know about this for quite a long time. In terms of raw numbers, this is going also to be a burden for the health system, much more than if we could invest to make those houses more energy efficient. So let's now try to zoom into this social sector. What is the role of this on the transition, on green transition? It's part of the problem, but it can be also part of the problem and part of the solutions. It's part of the problem because any organization and municipality or a private sector company, we all have a footprint in terms of the facilities because we use water and energy, also in terms of the operations when we have to provide meals. Probably we use cars for that, that use fuel, fossil fuels. And then in terms of our chain, the decision-making process, to decide, for example, what types of products are going to be supplied, if they are efficient, and if the providers of those equipment are concerned with this type of situation. So all these major decisions are important to have a chain, a value chain that is healthy. And that is why we say that this sector is part of the problem, but it's also part of the solution because the sector can be highly responsible by reducing its ecological footprint without of course, being uncomfortable. I'm not saying that we should all save on our energy bills without eating the places. We can reduce our consumption quite a lot. There are lots of efficient and sustainable ways to reduce our footprint. Here you see two pictures, the inauguration of a project developed with the participatory budget in our city with photovoltaic panels that were assembled on the rooftop. And the majority of these institutions can do it. This is an IPSS, a social solidarity institution, private institution, and they can now use their photovoltaic panels, the production of energy to supply for the building and even the cars, their electric cars. Here on the down part, you see a kit that was produced by different institutions in the council. And we have different shops that produce this type of bags that are made in fabric and that can be reused. And these are two amazing examples. The social sector is also part of the solution because it's able to protect and develop the skills and empower people because they are much closer to the families. They know the families that need help. And at the local level, this is extremely important. And the sector can also provide new jobs. We know that the pandemic was had very serious effects in terms of unemployment, and we have been providing support in our municipality, developing the skills of the green transition and even the digital transition, because in the future we need to bear in mind these two perspectives. We can provide training to people, for example, on how to set up photovoltaic panels or other types of work that can be developed. If we are able to have more energy efficiency houses, this will protect the entire community. And finally, you see there the pilot projects that are being developed around us. There are universities and companies in this sector that need to understand the reality in the ground. And it's important to be able to use the third sector to understand the reality of the beneficiaries so that those companies and the academic sector can find new solutions for the realities that are found. So the social sector can be used as a laboratory for pilot projects, especially if you bear all of this in mind. And to conclude, you see fair transition in the center of all these circles and green transition together with social cohesion on the left-hand side. And these two areas walk hand in hand. You cannot have social dignity without environmental dignity. And on the right-hand side, you see the social sector together with the local governments, but with all governments, not only at the local level. And they can leverage one another, the social sector, the national government, the local government, they need to work together because they have a cross-cutting and complementary role towards green transition. And I am available to any questions you might have. Thank you.
Para de facto uma apresentação muito completa que nos dá
Well, in fact, this was a very complete presentation that gives us a very broad view of this situation. I'd like to ask Professor João Vasconcelos, who is a teacher at the School of Tourism and the Sea, is a researcher and is a researcher in the areas of climate and health. He has collaborated in several plans also regarding climate change. Well, good afternoon. Thank you very much. It is for me a pleasure to be able to be here. Thank you very much for this invitation. This is a very thing that is very dear to me because these topics actually touch on my research. And this is why I would like to thank very much Joana, who actually saved quite a few slides for me. Now, so with regards to the challenge I would like to, the message I would like to leave you with. You know, I talk too much, and I felt that I would not be able to stick to the 10-minute, and decided to sum things and stick to things that I feel are important for this forum. I'll be speaking about climate change. I will not be speaking about heat waves, but I will rather center on the vulnerability to heat as an element that I feel be must concentrate our attention right now. With regards to the impact of climate change, I've cut quite a bit of stuff. This illustrates the Paris agreements. This was an agreement that they will actually have to meet. They have to meet a series of aspects, and the world has been concentrated in four big possible scenarios until 2100. On the one hand, we have this called RCP 8.5, which is an indicator of the seriousness of greenhouse effects, and the worst case scenario is as business as possible, and the best of the worlds is if we actually mitigate greenhouse gases very strongly, at least to have within the next decade. So, in fact, there is no scenarios concerning the improvement of the current situation. In the best possible scenario, we will not exceed more than 2 degrees of increase in temperature, and that is a lot. But let's speak about RCP 8.5 and RCP 6.0 or 5.5. So this is an estimate of the air temperature for each of the scenarios, and we see here what I mentioned earlier. Most likely the best case scenario will be an increase of 2 degrees centigrade. This this is the curve of global CO2 levels, and we had recently 490 parts per million when you know, of the 4 scenarios, one of them at least is in the politician's mind, but is not happening. This is why we're speaking today of climate transition, in the sense that this is a climate emergency. Whether we want it or not, this is a challenge that lies ahead of us. And we are not being fast enough to reduce one of the most important environmental threats that we have in our planet. Now, this is a bit confusing. Let's try to relate this to health matters. As all the beings that need to regulate their body temperature, and that is something that happens to humans whenever our temperature is low, we trigger a set of mechanisms that lead us to something that is called homeostasis, meaning that we regulate our temperature depending on the environment temperature. If it is too cold or very cold, sometimes we tend to have less circulation in the extremities of the body. And this is why we have red fingers. On the other hand, if it is too hot, we start to sweat. Now, this effort to acclimatize has a cost, and the cost it has is that we need to make a regulatory effort in same cases. Whenever there is a failure, complications may result. So regarding climate, there is an indicator, which is the UTCI indicator that simulates for a standard individual, regardless of their problems and comorbidities, for a standard or for a ordinary individual, literature says that there is a very big thermoregulatory effort. So when it is very cold, our body triggers a stress, which is a very important one. And the same happens in very hot days. So please stick to the colors and or analyze the colors, classes of discomfort by cold. This is part of the work that we did on the adaptation to climate change. And what we see here is that there is a seasonality of this discomfort. So what we have here is percentages of the days of January, and we see exactly the classes there. What we see is that 42% of the month of January in this decade had cold stress. And in the 1970s, however, the months of January was considered to be moderately cold. Now, what we did, we did this small animation, and we have here, what happened every decade, and these are areas. I can't explain everything here, but I will have to explain you after all, if you would like to go into more detail about this. In all the areas of Portugal, even in the coastline, we have a clear increase of heat during the summer. But funny enough, we have a seasonality of heat throughout the year, and we have, a projection of an almost disappearing of the cold. With regards to figures, all the classes, and this is the number of days per year that you are actually rated in these levels. And we see that at least in some areas of AML, we may have more than 91 years per year in one of the discomfort classes, at least 3 months every year, and also at least 3 months that were rated as cold discomfort. So therefore, I would like to say that we have a problem that we just cannot neglect. Now, I'd like to speak about the impacts on health, but I can't do that. But this is the heat wave in 2003, and this alerted us to social vulnerability. We had many other heat waves, but what happened in Paris at this time was very much studied. And we had more than 2,000 people dying than the average rate of death during the correspondent periods of the year. And the study shows that people that lived alone or that lived under the roofs of the buildings had a higher risk vis-à-vis these factors. So, in fact, climate change is not something that depends on these changes, comorbidity and age seems to be a factor that increases the seriousness of exposure to these situations. I'd like to speak about the cold, but I will not have time to do that. The EU has a very similar study that shows which is the percentage of the population that is not actually able to moderate the temperature of their houses during the year. If we look into this carefully, and these data stop in 2012, I don't know exactly why, but you can see that from the whole of the EU, Bulgaria is the country that has more people that report that they cannot moderate the temperatures of their homes in the summer. And you're actually trying to see whether I am trying to get the 20% more poors are in the those lighter blue dots, and more than that, sorry to insist, the 20 richest report more that they are unable to refrigerate their homes, to cool their homes rather. I do not have too much time to discuss this. I'm certainly open to debate this with you later on, but this is the analogy of the iceberg. There are quite a few things that are hidden, but things that we can actually see. We have the sector of health in Portugal, and this sector is not totally unprepared, and we have responses with regards to health institutions. We have the Icaro index. It measures daily temperature, and it is based on the assumption it has a relationship with mortality. There is a cascade of procedures that we are aware, of how things happen. Entities have a set of procedures to actually react. So there is a response mechanism that has been very well architectured. But this is response to emergency. But then we have the part of the iceberg that is not visible. Maybe I will be able to address that during the Q&A period. But we have a dimension of society that we actually need to discuss when we speak of climate change. We have the heat wave in Canada, for instance, that shows us the danger of heat. In the EU, we may have very similar with heat waves. And the one we recently had in Canada. I am looking forward to the results of the new census because the last indicators on the use of climatization go back to 2011. In 2011, 98% of houses did not have any kind of air conditioning within, and this was within the metropolitan Lisbon area. I would like to discuss with you issues regarding energy poverty. What is it that the UK does concerning cold? No, the elderly people in the UK cannot justify the lack of response to cold. There is a fund that they can actually resort to that provides financing for heating purposes. The same could be said for heat, the urban context, our cities, the way they are built. What is it? What does it mean to have cities that are climate change friendly? The issue of illiteracy. Even if we have the means, we may have, in some cases, difficulty in responding to heat, and then the age range, our aging, what does this have? We need to have answers that are more efficient with age, and how can we articulate the monitoring of the vulnerable population? This is something that we have been debating. Now, I am available for the Q&A period, and this is what I wanted to share with you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think that we've had a very complete reading regarding the opportunities and challenges of green transition for this social economy more specifically. We don't have much time left, and time flies, as we usually say, and we have to speed up our session. I would like now to move forward to the best practices on green transition and digital transition that were selected from what we've been doing in our social networks, and can be examples that are very interesting in these challenging times that we have been experiencing. I would like to give the floor to Sandra Afonso, who is a member of the Community Center of Tires, where she has been working for almost 30 years. It's a pleasure to have.
Obrigada, Sérgio. Realmente são 3 décadas, mas são 3
Thank you, Sergio. I've been working for almost 30 years in this field, very gladly. Good afternoon to the participants, not too many. Hopefully we have much more on streaming. Good afternoon also to the other speakers. It is a big pleasure to be here today with you. I would like to greet and congratulate the organization of this initiative, which gives the right value to the contribution of the digital economy and these social sectors to the economy of Portugal. It's important to stress out the importance of networks, which are so important in Cascais, and the 5 councils of the Portuguese network of Portuguese cities, showing that this brings added value, and I can gain more, and we can gain much more from working together. I think it is important and fundamental for this way of being that was mentioned here, and I hope that this is not something exclusive to the local authorities, the local powers, but to the other areas of the society. And I am a Portuguese citizen above everything else, and an European citizen. And that is why I would like to thank for the invitation to be here to share with you the contribution of the Community Center of Tires, using different practices which show our commitment towards innovation, environmental responsibility, and into building a more solidary society. It's a local experience, but it's been shared with others in terms of our intervention. And we have been using some practices that we believe to be very important, bearing in mind that no one can be left behind, especially senior citizens. And based on this inclusion perspective, we developed and hired a platform that is adequate to our senior citizens on different dimensions, providing them with entertainment, but also cognitive stimulation, learning and communication between peers, with the technical staff, but also with families. through a computer in our center. Users and beneficiaries have their own cards, having access to these different possibilities, but also at home for those who we provide domicile support. Using this platform, they can communicate with one another, but also provide alerts and alarms for them not to forget their medication and that they have a consultation or an appointment booked. The results are very positive in terms of the impact on senior citizens, and we think we need to demystify the idea that seniors are highly vulnerable. In our experience, we were able to understand that they can use this in a very intuitive way. And they are very enthusiastic and want to be involved, to participate, and to evolve. The platform allows for more complex contents to take place and to be used either from the cognitive perspective. They can have, for example, puzzles that they can play and use. So it's been added value to have this platform in a tablet, for example, allowing for a strong intervention from the elderly. We don't want to leave anyone behind. From the professional perspective of this platform, we've had access since 2017 to a computerized platform that is adequate and done according to our needs, highly customized for the management of teams, for the management of services, for the recording of information in a very systematized way according to our needs, and allowing us to reduce the overload of having paper records and making us much more efficient and effective in terms of our professional interventions. We also have some good news, which has to do with the use of cars that are 100% electric cars to provide house support. And we have been able to reduce waste in terms of wasting time. We cover São Domingo de Ranas, and we have specific routes that allow us to reduce energy consumption and help the environment. Our vehicles are well adapted to the services we provide, to provide meals and wash clothes, also medication, and we have a very good way. We have been able to organize very effectively. We would like to thank the municipality of Cascais for allowing us through financial support to acquire these vehicles. I don't have much time, but I would like to tell you that since 2016, when we had to do some requalification work, we were able to assemble and to set on our rooftops some solar panels that were very positive in our two buildings. In the kindergarten building, we are now considering the possibility of having photovoltaic panels so that we are able to produce our own energy. And I would like to ask Felipe to show you our short video, which shows quite clearly our experience in the ground in terms of green and digital transition. Thank you.
São estes os nossos pequenos passos.
So these are our small steps. We've mentioned, that decisions of today have an effect in tomorrow. So the future starts now, and all this capacity building that has been mentioned here has to do with senior citizens as well, and also contributes to this vision of the community that we have in proximity. And political decisions, must have this attitude of anticipating things because it generates trust among all the social stakeholders. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I would like to ask Raquel Ribeiro, also from another organization of the social network, to try to be brief. Good afternoon. I will do my best to try to reduce my 5 minutes to 4 minutes. I'll speak about the program to support people in need. We are one of the mediator entities of the district of Funchal. We are one of the entities that works in this project. This is a program that supports people with food items, and as entity, that was our concern. Nevertheless, this program implies a few procedures, bureaucratic procedures, back office procedures, which are very big. Considering our dimension, and when we started, this project in 2018, we needed to look into this, to approach this in a different way. So we needed to issue documentation for each of the families that benefits from the program. We've had about 140 families benefiting from this program every year. So you can see that there is a significant amount of bureaucratic work involved. So we asked whether we could do this via digital signature using a tablet. This would be able to generate a general archive for us, and the calculations that we did resulted in a saving of 139 hours of work, because we do not have to store a paper. It's just one paper that we need to digitize. We have saved via these 139 hours, and this accounts for 20 working days, and we can use this time to provide support to people, for instance, to take an elderly person to a health center. So these hours were spent with the families instead of being spent with bureaucratic work. Now, our project, Gaivatas de Torre, was fortunate enough to share this procedure with Social Security, and as a result of that, they decided to get tablets for all the mediator institutions in Portugal. And in fact, these 20 work days become many more days national-wise. So all the different associations that use this method may now devote more time to the people they care for. Also, with regards to the savings of paper, it implies a tremendous amount of savings of paper and trees, obviously. So this is our small presentation. I hope you enjoyed. This is a small thing, but when we look into procedures in a different manner, we can have savings, and in this case, we were able to multiply this to the national level. Thank you very much, Raquel. In fact, complex problems can be solved with simple solutions. And this is a very clear example of that. I'd like to ask Josério Fangueira. He is the CEO of the group Montalva and also of the parish center of São Vicente Alcabides. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the municipality of Cascais for their invitation to participate in this event. And to give you a little bit of a context of our center, we have 437 users in 4 schools, 118 users in residence, and 141 collaborators. Our green and digital transition was made based in our vision that was defined 3 or 4 years ago. Then we defined the strategy and objectives that included the satisfaction of clients, collaborators, and sustainability. And we had several actions to assure this, namely to fulfill this digital and green transition. So we decided to create a roadmap for these actions. With regards to the green transition, we had several actions throughout the year, some of them with very good results. And now we are building our photovoltaic central that is started to operate very recently. And right now we produce 60% of all the energy that we consume. Costs with electricity were very high, one of the biggest costs, 76,000 euro, and 2020 49,000 euro. And at this point we did not have the photovoltaic central working. Our environmental footprint was also reduced significantly. With regards to digital transition, we did the same thing. We created a roadmap. And just to give you an idea, 5 years ago, we had 2 PCs and 2 emails. Basically, this was our digital. Right now, we have wireless in all the buildings. We have different infrastructure hardwares, and we are able to run several applications on this. One for the kindergarten and another one for the senior homes. In the area of schools, we had a typical problem that was it was difficult to communicate with parents, and teachers would speak to parents at the end of the day, and we always had a folder for each student that was always delayed. It was only handed to the parents at the end of the year. So via a platform that runs on tablets and on PCs as well, our teachers started to actually make a list of all the activities that the children had during the morning, and also the other issues regarding logistics, whether they ate well or not, whether they slept or not. So all this was recorded online, and the number of interactions was significantly reduced, and this helped a lot during this pandemic stage. But this is, in fact, an application that allows us to better control the work of all our team and really find out whether they are following the pedagogical plan. The teachers love this, and their response was a very positive one. With regards to senior residences, we have multidisciplinary teams working in these areas, the psychologist, a physiotherapist, occupational therapist, and we needed a platform that would concentrate all this information in real time, and that I could actually get to the plan of each of the elderly and have an input of the different stakeholders and know exactly what was, let's put it this way, the state of the art, and also the nurses and the doctors have access to this platform. So the person, the user, has all the inputs in one record. And this is something that happened on a live mode. We have daily the support to daily activities, therapeutical support, clinical activities, and so on. So at any point, if anything happens to any of the elderly in our homes, we know exactly where he is, and we can tell the members of their family how they are moving on and evolving. And to conclude, somebody mentioned algorithms. In the future, our idea right now is to, through a partnership that we will be testing during the month of July, we have, the sensors that detect the behavior of people. They even have a GPS incorporated, and we will try to forecast the type of problems that an elderly may have. For instance, if he has difficulties walking, this bracelet can actually detect that he is suddenly becoming prone to falls, and we can change their therapy and support him so that he does not fall. In a nutshell, we decided through a vision for our center to guarantee that these actions would bear fruit in the future. We created a roadmap. These were feasible, economically speaking, and we've seen the photovoltaic central, but they are also profitable, let's put it this way, with regards to the satisfaction of the users. And we now have more time to care for them, because everything started to be automatic, and we don't use paper anymore for their records. So sustainability has increased, and this is what I wanted to share with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for sharing your experiences of the Social and Parochial Center of São Vicente in Alcabides. I would now give the floor to Ana Rita Antunes from Copernico. She is so passionate about this project that I'm afraid that 5 minutes is not going to be enough. I ask her to at least try to stick to her 5 minutes. Good afternoon. I promise to keep to 5 minutes because I've cut quite a lot of my presentation. Copernico is a cooperative of renewable energies. It's the only cooperative in Portugal acting in this sector of renewables. And we want to have other cooperatives working in this sector. What do we do? Very quickly, energy renewables cooperatives were a response of the populations to the problems of crisis throughout the 20th century. The one you probably know more, and a few of us might even remember, has to do with the oil crisis of the 70s. And this is a highly resilient model, and populations at the time thought that they needed to produce their own energy. So renewables cooperatives are the so-called res coops, and they are autonomous. I'm going to provide my presentation so you have access to all the information. So we are completely autonomous. We make all decisions, and we are as autonomous as any other social economy institution or company. So we own our own energy company. So based on democratic, open participation, we believe that Rescue should lead or be in the forefront of the energy transition that we need to gain in the future. There are over 1,900 cooperatives at European level, over 1 million citizens, European citizens that own these companies with renewables cooperatives in Portugal. So far, we only have one, and this is our profile. So Copernico is in the forefront, and we want more cooperatives to emerge. We produce renewable energy in a production unit for self-consumption, and we provide energy to companies that are our members with they are not able to sponsor this. So Copernico provides the investment, and this money does not come from the banking sector. We get funding from our members, and we share the results, the interests with them, and all gains with the social solidarity institutions, because they will be paying less for the energy than they would pay to the electric grids. We are the first cooperative that supplies electric energy in mainland Portugal, the entire territory, and this helps citizens to understand their bills, their invoices, providing information about the value that is going to be charged to people next year, for example. And we have a tool to test innovative ways of doing this, of managing energy and integrating more renewables in our electric energy invoice. In addition to the 60% we are already providing in terms of renewables. We also provide different services and approaches, for example, providing support to our members in terms of self-consumption, but also electric mobility. And we are also working on fighting energy poverty by participating in European projects, trying to understand how energy cooperatives throughout Europe can do it and are already doing through their developing projects, and how we can share those experiences and those results. Also, in terms of gender equality and balance, 70% of the members of energy cooperatives are men, but women usually manage the household budget. So why is that? We need to attract more women to this issue, to our cooperatives. And cooperatives need to develop knowledge and give it back to the society. So we have local groups for community intervention. And we developed the Tupperwares. Instead of Tupperware boxes, we talk about energy and how to save energy. We also work and are present on exhibitions, and we develop webinars and seminars on energy savings and how you can better use your energy. And if you want to know more about Copernico, please visit our website or send us an email. Thank you so much. Thank you. A very interesting experience, and it has been shared in many scopes. It's highly innovative at the national level. I hope I can now give the floor to João Barracho. He is the executive director of the Center of Digital Inclusion. He's joining us in streaming. Can you please join us? Can you hear me? Yes, it's perfect. We can hear you clearly. Good afternoon. I know I only have 5 minutes. I'll try to be as brief as possible. And at the end, if I was too quick, you can ask any question.
Pronto, então vou neste momento partilhar.
Okay, I would like to share my presentation with you. Please let me see whether you can, whether you have it in your screen or not. Yes, we have it in our screen right now. So we have essentially two major projects right now in Portugal, and these are the two practices that I would like to share with you. This is our basic methodology. I'll just skip this because it is known. The biggest project that we have right now is Apps for Good. At schools, we want to create apps for smartphones and tablets, always keeping in mind sustained development objectives. We have been able to involve hundreds of students and teachers. It is based in 4 periods, the inclusion of technology in teaching. The teacher is more of a facilitator and less of a leader. Also, a transformation in the teaching attitude, and also an approach with regards to the context of the real world via visits of teams to the different companies and support of the companies to our project. In practical terms, this is our team, a minimum to
Equipas multidisciplinares de professores e os experts que já falamos. Estes os tipos de cursos que temos, os cursos são no máximo 30 horas, obviamente 30 horas é o tempo conceptual do curso, digamos assim, mas ele é desenvolvido ao longo do ano letivo e, portanto, significa, na maior parte das vezes, muito mais que 30 horas. Pensávamos no início que iria ser aplicado apenas em regime extracurricular, mas neste momento mais de 50% dos professores aplica em regime curricular em todas as disciplinas, seja de programa de TICs, seja de geografia, seja de música, seja de educação física, por incrível que isso às vezes possa parecer. Estes são os módulos do desenvolvimento do produto que acompanhamos ao longo do ano. E o mais importante é, na prática, este cronograma, que é aquilo que explica como o programa funciona, portanto, todos os conteúdos baseados numa plataforma construída em Portugal, com OutSystems, portanto, nós fazemos welcome sessions, formação aos professores, visitas às escolas, antes eram todas as escolas, agora são sempre as novas escolas, temos um mês e meio de visitas às escolas presenciais, obviamente durante o Covid a pandemia foi em modo híbrido. Depois a formação acreditada aos professores, que tem um dia presencial e 5 sessões online, e depois a competição, que tem 2 fases regionais, que são as semifinais, que aconteceram no final de junho e início de julho, e que depois selecionam para as 22 equipas finalistas em setembro na Fundação Carlos Gulbenkian. Temos aqui imagens, tanto dos virtuais como dos presenciais, portanto, à esquerda em cima ainda o regional em Oeiras, ao centro e à direita em cima já os virtuais, e depois também os eventos finais na Gulbenkian em modo presencial ou virtual. Os grandes números deste projeto, aqueles mais significativos, são de facto a grande adesão das alunas, mais de 50% numa área onde, em termos de economia real e empresariais, a percentagem de mulheres é muito baixa, portanto aqui temos mais de 51%, também a percentagem uma grande percentagem de professores não tecnológicos, apesar de obviamente os professores tecnológicos serem muito importantes, mas é importante também que esta questão de integrar a tecnologia vá para os professores não TIC, e daí o sucesso também do programa. Isto nas escolas. Temos depois um outro conceito, que é o Centro de Cidadania Digital, que neste momento o Centro de Cidadania Digital que dirigimos em Avalongo já vai para o 4º ano, evoluiu para o Switch to Innovation, que é o quê? Que é um conceito de criar um ecossistema digital. Portanto, não se quer criar aqui um Silicon Valley, não há startups, quer dizer, deverá haver, mas não é o foco, startups de investigação, de inovação, etc, etc. Há sim a criação de um ecossistema que inclua a tecnologia de inovação social. Okay? Temos gerido isto, o alvo são crianças, jovens, adultos, séniores, no fundo toda a comunidade, com projetos de todos os estilos, desde incubadoras tecnológicas até de apoio ao comércio local, formando em tecnologias desempregados do IFP, que depois vão servir de consultores e se faz um match com o comércio local, como seja a pizzaria, o health club, o talho, etc., e workshops, o startup weekend, etc., etc., todos estes tipos de atividades que incluem tecnologia e que trazem toda a comunidade à Casa do Conhecimento e ao Centro de Cidadania Digital, e também uma otimização das antigas salas do futuro, atualmente laboratórios de aprendizagem das escolas, do qual também fazemos na prática aquilo que é um chamado PMO, não é? Portanto, damos à Câmara o programa de tudo o que se está a passar, tanto em termos de escolas como Casa do Conhecimento, como Centro de Cidadania Digital, de forma a Câmara saber como está a rentabilizar o investimento que fez, tanto em escolas como nos outros locais. Neste projeto temos também grandes números, e este ano terminamos, na prática coincide também com o ano letivo, apesar de não ter necessariamente a ver com aulas, este ano terminamos com um evento que foi o Switch to Innovation Summit, onde conseguimos levar todos os projetos, incluindo cidadania e tecnologia de todas as áreas da Câmara de Valongo, e não só, dos centros sociais, das associações de moradores, etc., etc., também envolvendo algumas universidades, a Universidade de Aveiro, a Universidade de Minho, e o CEI, Centro de Investigação, com um impacto muito grande em termos daquilo que nós pretendemos, que é a inovação social e, neste caso, também uma promoção das cidades humanas e inteligentes, as famosas Smart and Human Cities. Pronto, em termos de reconhecimentos, estas práticas têm tido bastante reconhecimento. Já referi o prémio da Unesco, em termos do Web for Good, foi reconhecido também o ano passado pela União Europeia como uma prática inspiradora para a educação tecnológica, e todas as nossas ações são iniciativas do Incode 2030, que têm trabalhado connosco. Estamos em articulação também com a transição digital, de forma a conseguir expandir o Web for Good a todas as escolas do país, e neste caso contamos também com Cascais, e pronto, e somos também um centro emissor de diploma de competências básicas. Temos, aliás, no Switch to Innovation, uma plataforma online também de cursos básicos que partilhamos com o Brasil, nossa congénere mãe. Aliás, o CDI Portugal surgiu do CDI Brasil, que foi criado há 26 anos pelo Rodrigo Baggio, que ainda é hoje o presidente do CDI Portugal, e, portanto, temos uma plataforma onde temos diversos cursos para iniciação à tecnologia, que partilhamos também já com alguns vídeos de população de Moçambique, onde também estamos a trabalhar com algumas organizações que trabalham em Moçambique. Basicamente é isto. Acho que, se não foi 5 minutos, foi pouco mais. Lamento ter sido tão depressa, mas obviamente estou à disposição para qualquer dúvida que haja e que possa ser útil.
Da partilha, de facto uma experiência muito interessante, seguramente que não é possível num tempo tão curto conhecer toda a experiência do CDI, mas eu acho que ficam as pistas principais para podermos ir acompanhando e até utilizar como referência. Eu queria, o tempo de facto ultrapassámos muito o tempo que tínhamos programado para esta sessão, mas a riqueza das apresentações, a sua diversidade de temas que aqui trouxeram, é um ganho face ao tempo que acabámos por despender, mas eu não queria encerrar sem, enfim, colocar aqui 2 ou 3 questões muito rápidas. A primeira questão que eu colocava era ao professor João Vasconcelos, que é, nós vimos do lado da economia social há uma trajetória de investimento na eficiência energética. Recentemente, Barcelona anunciou a criação de 150, à volta de 150, 160 abrigos climáticos, já a preparar-se para a sucessão de ondas de calor que vamos ter e a necessidade de proteger as pessoas daquele stress térmico que foi apresentado. Isso pode ser um caminho, ou seja, podemos pensar que a nossa estrutura social, a nossa estrutura da economia social pode ser também uma rede de resposta ao problema da mudança climática? Já está.
Já está?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you, Sergio. Yes, I truly believe so. Initiatives such as these are extremely important for adaptation, and we have some experiences where simple replies, simple responses were in fact extremely effective. In Viseu, where we developed some work, the exposure could be helped by the support of the priest, of the local priest, which would not be part of the top-down vision at the institutional level, but the churches are very cool. So this could be a very good shelter. So it's not for the General Directorate for Health to identify what is going to be the best spot, but rather to the local authorities. I think that the example of Barcelona is it's a very good example that should be followed with concepts such as understanding the climate diversity in the cities. For example, the central squares are extremely important, and we should provide for leisure activities, but for the protection of people as well, with shade areas, for example. I hope that I was able to reply much better than I would, of course. It's a very good reply. I would like to close this session. We've heard three experiences that only three examples of many others that are being developed in Cascais by different entities. So I would like to ask Sandra, Raquel and Rogério if, based on their experience, if you would have to leave an example or an alert to other institutions so that they could develop this type of initiatives and procedures, what would you say? What would you tell them? Well, Rogério, in my first or second slide, I have to tell you that if we are not able to bring the leaders, the top leaders to this sector, if they do not get involved, nothing will be done. So this needs to be part of the strategy of the institutions. And this will be another action, another activity. We work with people that are paying attention to lots of things. So if they are not alert to this type of situations, it needs to be part of our daily lives. It needs to become part of our DNA, in fact, so that the decisions, the resources are present and are used. I would give two replies. First of all, we need a high level of commitment from the team, a commitment that might not be linear or immediate, but needs to start from the beginning, empowering everyone and involving everyone to this type of digital practices, showing that they are going to make your life easier and benefit much more from your free time to do other things. If you improve your procedures, you can have more free time for other things. Also empowering our senior citizens, our experience is very positive. If we empower our senior citizens, we are empowering people while they age. Elderly people that can coordinate with the family and is able to communicate better. It's, of course, extremely enriching for the family and for the family to help them. Very quickly, my final message would be, don't be afraid of changing. It's the idea here, it's not being just more modern, but rather to gain in terms of effectiveness and efficacy. So if you do things well in an efficient manner, in a different manner, you are going to gain quite a lot, much more in terms of the impact you can have with your social work. Thank you. I would like to thank all speakers for being with us until the end of this session, but also to the participants. I'm sure that it was a very enriching session to all the attendees. And I would like to conclude by sharing some of the key ideas shared with us. That we have many challenges ahead of us, but with leadership, commitment, competency, and courage, I'm sure that the social economy will be up to the challenges of green transition and digital transition ahead of us. Thank you very much. See you next time.
Bem, foi uma tarde muito rica e muito
It was a very enriching afternoon, and I'm here again just to thank you for your participation and for attending this session, as well as all these speakers and Sergio Barroso for being our moderator. I would like to apologize once again for the delay in the beginning of the afternoon. And I would like to remind you that we have another session, another challenging session tomorrow, starting at 10 a.m. And we will close our session tomorrow by celebrating the 20 years of existence of our social network in Cascais. Thank you and see you tomorrow.